In this case, the subcontracting company's name had a double meaning. It was derived from the riddle of the ring in J.R.R. Tolkien's novels. Built solely to gain the contract for the F-35, Gollum Solutions promised to solve the riddle through software, and in so doing, make the F-35 invisible. Just as the ring could do. As enticingly clever as the name was, what the owners never realized was that there were two sides to the ring, and they would pay a price for it. The ring in Tolkien's world was corrupting, with anyone who wore it turning against his nature to serve a different master, and the name Gollum would prove prophetic, which is where Jake Shu came in. A Chinese-American, he was well placed to create havoc for money. A Gollum in his own right, he had worn the proverbial ring and had been corrupted. 2 months ago, he'd been detailed from his company in Australia to the F-35 final assembly plant in Japan, an unexpected advantage. Japan had the only such plant outside of the United States, with all other F-35s being built in Fort Worth, Texas, and because of it, he had an opportunity. He'd helped with the Byzantine assembly process, his expertise being in software integration. He'd done the job he was asked, along with a bit more, and was now wondering if it had worked. Sitting in the cold outside the control tower, now it was time to see if his inject actually mattered, because a human being was behind the controls. At the end of the day, he could alter the sensors of the plane, but the pilot was king, and yet, that man only did what his sensors told him to do. At least, that's what Jake hoped. His inject was simple: change what the pilot thought was correct. There was ample reason to believe that his alterations would work. Plenty of pilots crashed because they thought one thing and the unforgiving Earth thought another. The difference in those cases was that they chose to disbelieve what their instruments were telling them. What if the instruments themselves were telling the pilot something different? The helmet of the F-35 was a monstrosity, a $400,000 piece of gear that offered the pilot innumerable feeds, showing him everything that was occurring within his airspace. He could read the world in real time, gaining an unrivaled capability to defeat anything that chose to fight. The pilot read all of those feeds and trusted them explicitly, and it was all software-driven. The pilot controlled cameras that could detail everything around the aircraft, allowing him a 360-degree view that would be impossible without the helmet. He had feeds telling him every threat near the aircraft within 100 miles. He had sensors that detailed when to fire his weapons, only locking on when the computer told him it was correct, giving him an unparalleled ability to prevent collateral damage in modern warfare. He had more control over his destiny than any pilot in history. But what if what he was seeing was wrong? If his actual experience wasn't what was happening? What if his helmet told him one thing and reality was another? Jake heard the control tower say, "Comet 42, Comet 42, go to 31.5, inbound aircraft at 37. He heard, "Yes, understood." He waited with bated breath, conflicted. If this worked, he was murdering a person he'd never met. He heard, "Comet 42, you just passed through 20,000 feet. I instructed 31.5. Are you understanding?" Most of the Japanese air bases used by the United States were manned and operated solely by Americans, a symbiotic relationship that Japan allowed because the country fell under the U.S. umbrella of protection. Misawa was different. It was the only combined air base in the Pacific Theater, run jointly by both Japanese and U.S. personnel, and as such, had been chosen as the base for the first Japanese F-35s to showcase the partnership between the two countries. Jake knew that the men inside the control tower were Japanese, as was the man in the aircraft. They spoke English, because that was the air traffic control language the world over. But it was still a little surreal, especially since he wasn't Japanese. The pilot responded, a little miffed. "Yes, knock it off." Jake heard nothing for a pregnant second, and then the voice from the tower showed its first bit of urgency. "You've passed through 15,000 at 500 knots, acknowledge." "I understand, I have it." Nothing more. Then the voice from the tower became frantic. "You're at 2,000 feet and going 600 knots, acknowledge, acknowledge." Jake waited,